Are you a South African musician trying to figure out how much you should be giving in terms of your copyright to other composers in your music? Welcome to this episode where I plan on demystifying just that. Now, I've been getting a lot of questions about percentage splits and how musicians must go about sharing some of their royalties. So I decided to make this video to give you more or less a thumb suck or ballpark on how much you should be splitting your songs to give to other musicians involved in your music. Now, to make this clear that this is just a ballpark and you can negotiate differently, what is important is that you do use the split sheet in order to make it more or less official. Make sure everyone involved signs off on the split sheet. Also make sure that you use your split sheets immediately after the song has been complete so that everyone remembers how they contributed to the song. So I'm going to head over to my PC and show you step by step how SAMRO has made more or less a default percentage split. These are not my percentages, I'm using what SAMRO has suggested. So I'm going to head over to my PC and show you exactly how to do this. SAMRO's website, samro.org.za, and then you want to scroll down all the way to the bottom, and then underneath the tab where it says more, you'll find something called the distribution rules. So you click on there. It'll take some time to download depending on your internet connection, and this is the document SAMRO set out more or less as the rules of how things are distributed. So these are not set in stone and they can be changed depending on what was written with whoever you are working with. So where it says, it's actually a good document to read through if you want to know how generally things are working around in and around SAMRO. But where it says number 8, documented division of license revenue. So let me just zoom in there so you see a little better. Yeah, so number 8 says documented division of license revenue. So you click on there and then let's just read it through. Royalties allocated to participated works in distribution will only be distributed to rights holders if the work can be clearly identified and the respective share split has been appropriately notified and documented. So that's basically saying you'll only get your royalties once you send notification of works with accurate royalty splits. And then this is the important part when using this document to reference the percentage splits you are thinking. SAMRO's default standard sheets are as follows. So these are standard as according to SAMRO, but they can be changed depending on what was signed with the relative parties in your music. So for number 1, where it says composer, 100% goes to the composer. This is typically the beat maker making a beat. Since a beat maker making a beat, they're the only composer, or if you're a musician and you write down the notes, then the composer gets 100%. That makes sense because there's only one composer. A song has a composer and an author. Typically the composer is the one working on the instrumental, the beat, etc., and then the author is the person who writes the lyrics to the song. SAMRO gives a 50-50 split of that song. That's the default split. Those are the most common ones you would get. And then what is highly important to know is composer is given 50 and then the author is given the other 50%. But if there are multiple authors, they split up just the 50% of the author's share. And if there are multiple composers, they generally split up the percentage of the composer's share. So for an example, if I had 2 singers and then I made the beat, I still get 50, but the singers would get 25. That is something that a lot of the time gets missed when working with multiple people in your songs. So as you can see, that percentage splits are usually only 50-50 when there's an author and a composer, because together they need each other. But if you look at the other type of splits, arranger gets as low as 16, sub-author gets 16, 8 arranger and a sub-author, depending on how it's split out and depending on the type of song. So it's critical that you know exactly what the type of work is. So if it's a song, the rights holders involved, which is usually a composer and an author, the fraction, you can leave that out because the percentage generally makes more sense for people. So 50%, 50%. What I also found quite interesting is over here where the work includes a publisher. the reason I'm interested on this is because when it's just music only, you'd have the composer getting 66% roughly, and the publisher getting 33. What is I'd like to highlight is a lot of publishers, most of the ones that I've worked, this is actually 50-50. So the publisher takes 50% and the composer takes 50%, which kind of makes sense considering if you have a publisher pushing out the work, you literally don't do anything really. You just give over the composition and then the publisher does the work, the legwork of getting the music used. But yeah, and then that's generally how things are working. Sub-publisher is something, once you start getting majorly into sync, you want to consider sub-publishing, but it's not something that you really need to worry about initially. And then they just break out a little more things. As you can see on the publisher share, the maximum it can go up to is only 50%. So the ones that I have been working with have taken up the maximum. And a lot of people don't like the fact that publishers take this amount, but once you've worked in the as a publisher side trying to get your music being used, you actually learn to understand why it is as high as 50%. But this is not set in stone. You can get a publisher that will give you whatever, but what is important is that you read your contracts before you're signing out, and if you do not understand what is taking place in your contract, get someone, particularly a lawyer, that's not referred to you by the person giving you the contract, to read through the contract. But those are the typical percentage splits. So what's another thing is, it does become blurry when you don't have it as clean as just a composer, the beat maker, and just an author. Sometimes you have an author that's not contributing much, and sometimes you as the one of the author, the composer, is actually technically doing more than the author. But what I've learned is it's usually best to split up a percentage evenly amongst the people involved, unless there was some financial transaction taking place, then you may have something to negotiate with the people involved. But generally speaking, this is a good ballpark to go around using when you want to start splitting things around. What else? There was something else that I wanted to mention. I've already mentioned it. So if there's two composers, they split up their composition share, and then if there's multiple authors, they typically split up the author's share. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you want to know how much musicians made in 2020 in South Africa, watch this video.